In July 2024, a Norwegian fisherman operating a sonar-equipped trawler in the Sognefjord detected something impossible. His depth finder showed a massive metal structure 60 meters below the surface, sitting on the fjord floor where no shipwreck had ever been recorded. When marine archaeologists deployed underwater drones to investigate, they found something that made the Norwegian Coast Guard seal off the entire area within hours: a perfectly preserved submarine pen carved into the underwater cliff face, invisible from the surface, designed to hide U-boats from Allied reconnaissance. Inside the first chamber, Kriegsmarine naval charts dated April 1945, a still-functioning air filtration system, encrypted signal logs, and a name painted on a steel bulkhead: Kapitän See Erik Nordström, U-1172. Nordström was a U-boat commander who'd vanished from Bergen in late April 1945. His death certificate, signed by British naval officers, listed him as lost at sea when his submarine was reportedly sunk by depth charges off the Norwegian coast. His family held a memorial service. Allied intelligence closed his file. But the fjord base tells a different story. That fisherman had just discovered a fully operational submarine facility built in the mid-1940s, complete with fuel storage, torpedo racks, and living quarters, clearly designed for someone who planned to return. If you want to see what investigators uncovered about Nordström's real mission, and why British naval intelligence spent decades searching Norwegian waters for missing U-boats, hit that like button. It helps us bring more forgotten World War II stories to light. And subscribe if you haven't already, because what we found in the base's sealed command room will rewrite what we thought we knew about Kriegsmarine's final operations. Now back to April 1945, when a U-boat captain received orders that were never officially logged. Character Introduction 130-330. Kapitän See Erik Nordström was 42 years old when the war ended. A veteran Kriegsmarine officer who'd commanded U-boats since 1940, he'd survived 5 years of the Atlantic War, when most U-boat commanders lasted less than 2. Born in Bergen in 1903 to a Norwegian father and German mother, Nordström held dual citizenship until Norway's occupation in 1940. His mixed heritage made him valuable to German naval intelligence. He knew Norwegian waters intimately, spoke the language fluently, and had family connections throughout Norway's coastal communities. Nordström's U-boat record was impressive. U-1172, a Type INS C-40 long-range submarine, had completed 9 combat patrols under his command since commissioning in March 1943. His confirmed kills 6 Allied merchant ships totaling 34,000 tons. His specialization: Norwegian coastal operations, resupply missions to isolated Wehrmacht garrisons, and clandestine insertions of intelligence operatives. What made Nordström different from other U-boat commanders was his relationship with Norway. While officially serving Germany, he'd maintained contact with Norwegian family members, even those who'd joined the resistance. British intelligence suspected him of playing both sides, but could never prove it. His personnel file, declassified in 2008, contains a note: Nordström's loyalty questionable. Recommend monitoring. By March 1945, Nordström operated from Bergen's Laksevåg U-boat base, one of the last functioning Kriegsmarine facilities in Norway. The strategic situation was deteriorating rapidly. Germany's submarine fleet had been decimated from 400 operational boats in 1943 to fewer than 60 in 1945. Allied air superiority made surface transit suicidal. The war was clearly lost. But Nordström had been planning for this moment since late 1944. His logistics background, combined with intimate knowledge of Norway's 25,000 kilometers of fjord coastline, gave him something most officers lacked: a way out. Between November 1944 and April 1945, he'd systematically diverted supplies from U-boat operations: fuel, food, torpedoes, construction materials. Small amounts each time, nothing that would trigger investigation in the chaos of Germany's collapse. He'd also been quietly surveying remote fjord locations, looking for the perfect hiding place. What Allied intelligence didn't know was that Nordström had been contacted by elements within the Abwehr who were planning for Germany's defeat. They needed experienced operatives who could disappear, maintain assets, and potentially resume operations if circumstances changed. Nordström was perfect: experienced, resourceful, and with plausible deniability through his Norwegian connections. What happened in Bergen's final weeks would remain hidden for 79 years, until a fisherman's sonar pinged something that shouldn't exist. Historical context, 330 to 430. April 1945. Germany's naval war was over in all but name. The Kriegsmarine had lost the Battle of the Atlantic. Allied convoys now crossed with minimal losses. German U-boats faced coordinated air and sea hunter-killer groups equipped with advanced radar and sonar. Survival rates for U-boat crews had plummeted to less than 25%. Most boats never returned from patrol. In Norway, the situation was equally bleak. Over 350,000 Wehrmacht troops occupied the country, but they were isolated, cut off from reinforcement or evacuation. Allied air superiority prevented resupply. The Norwegian resistance, armed and organized by British SOE, controlled large areas of the countryside. Bergen's U-boat base at Luxevig had been heavily bombed throughout 1944 and early 1945. The massive concrete bunkers remained operational, but the port facilities were damaged. Supply deliveries became sporadic. Fuel was rationed. Ammunition stocks dwindled. For U-boat commanders like Nordström, the calculation was simple: continue operations and die, surrender and face war crimes tribunals, or disappear. The third option required resources, planning, and opportunity. Norway's geography offered unique possibilities. The country's fjords, deep, narrow inlets carved by glaciers, extended hundreds of kilometers inland. Many had never been fully surveyed. Underwater caves, hidden coves, and submerged passages riddled the coastline. It was possible to hide entire vessels if you knew where to look. What made Nordström's plan feasible was timing. In April 1945, Allied forces were focused on Germany's final collapse. Norway was a backwater, important for occupation, but not for immediate military operations. British and Norwegian forces would eventually secure the country, but not immediately. There was a window, perhaps weeks, maybe months, when someone with a submarine could vanish into the fjords. The planning had been meticulous. The execution would require perfect timing and absolute secrecy. The escape, 4:30 to 7:30, April 20th, 1945. Nordström received orders to conduct a final patrol, harass Allied shipping off Scotland, then return to Bergen. Standard orders for a war everyone knew was ending. But Nordström had received different orders, delivered personally by an Abwehr courier who arrived in Bergen on April 15th. These orders were never logged. According to his personal log, found 79 years later in the fjord base, the instructions were clear: disappear, maintain asset, await contact. April 22nd, 1800 hours, U-1172 departed Bergen on what the official log listed as anti-shipping patrol, Scottish coast. Return ETA May 10th. The crew consisted of 48 men, but only 31 were the original crew. The other 17 were specialists, engineers, construction workers, supply personnel, all carefully selected. The submarine sailed west, following standard departure procedures. British coastal watchers observed the boat heading toward the North Atlantic. Allied submarine tracking logged U-1172 as departed Bergen the 22nd of April, destination Atlantic convoy routes. But U-1172 never reached the Atlantic. April 23rd, 0300 hours. Under cover of darkness, Nordström altered course. Instead of heading west toward Scotland, U-1172 turned north, hugging Norway's coast, running submerged during daylight, surfacing only at night to recharge batteries. The destination, Sognefjord, Norway's longest and deepest fjord, extending 200 kilometers inland from the coast. Nordström had surveyed the area during a 1944 resupply mission and discovered something remarkable: an underwater cave system in the fjord's northern branch, accessible only by submarine, invisible from the surface. April 25th, 0400 hours. U-1172 entered Sognefjord submerged, navigating by sonar and Nordström's memorized charts. The fjord's depth, over 1,300 meters in places, allowed the submarine to remain completely hidden. At a point 40 kilometers inland, where the fjord narrowed to less than 2 kilometers wide, Nordström guided U-1172 toward a specific underwater cliff face. At 60 meters depth, sonar detected the opening, a natural cave entrance, 12 meters wide and 8 meters high, carved by glacial meltwater thousands of years earlier. The submarine entered carefully. The cave extended 80 meters into the cliff, then opened into a massive underwater chamber, approximately 100 meters long, 40 meters wide, with an air-filled space above the waterline. Perfect. Over the next 3 days, working in shifts, the crew converted the cave into a submarine pen. They constructed a wooden dock above the waterline, installed ventilation systems using the cave's natural air shafts, and positioned supplies brought aboard before departure from Bergen. Meanwhile, Nordström executed the deception. April 27, 1400 hours. Using U-1172's radio, Nordström transmitted a distress signal on Kriegsmarine emergency frequency, under attack by British destroyers positioned 59° N 4° W, taking damage, flooding aft compartments. The position was 200 kilometers west of Norway in known Allied patrol areas. No follow-up transmission was sent. Radio silence suggested the boat had sunk. British naval intelligence intercepted the signal. HMS Opportune, a destroyer operating in the area, investigated and reported possible debris field, oil slick, no survivors observed. The report concluded U-1172 presumed sunk by depth charge attack. On May 2, Kriegsmarine headquarters in Flensburg logged U-1172 as lost with all hands. Nordström and his 48-man crew were declared dead. What British intelligence didn't know was that U-1172 sat perfectly intact in an underwater cave, 40 kilometers inside Sognefjord, while Nordström and his crew prepared for a long stay. The deception had worked flawlessly, but the real work was just beginning. Building the base 7:30 to 9 o'clock. The cave system that investigators discovered in 2024 wasn't naturally suitable for long-term occupation. Nordström's crew spent 6 months converting it into a fully functional submarine base. May-June 1945. The first priority was air circulation. The cave had natural ventilation through cracks in the rock ceiling, but these needed to be enlarged and disguised. Using explosives carefully measured to avoid attracting attention, engineers widened ventilation shafts to create constant airflow. The openings on the surface, located on a steep mountainside 100 meters above the ford, were camouflaged with rocks and vegetation. July-August 1945. Construction of permanent structures began. Using lumber from a Wehrmacht supply depot Nordström had quietly raided before disappearing, the crew built living quarters, a command room, storage facilities, and a workshop, all on the wooden dock platform above the submarine. The submarine itself remained moored in the flooded section of the cave, ready for emergency departure. Fuel was carefully rationed, but the boat maintained enough diesel for one final voyage if needed. September-October 1945. The base became operational. Nordström established a routine. 20 men maintained the base while 28 lived outside, integrated into local Norwegian communities using false identities prepared before the war ended. These men rotated every 2 months, ensuring the base remained manned while maintaining contact with the outside world. Several crew members had Norwegian family connections, which made integration easier. Others posed as German POWs who'd escaped from British custody and were hiding among sympathetic Norwegians. In the chaotic post-war period, displaced persons were common. Nobody looked too closely. Supply runs were conducted monthly. Small boats would rendezvous at predetermined coordinates outside the fjord, transferring food, fuel, and equipment to U-1172, which would then transport supplies into the hidden base. To observers, these looked like normal fishing operations. The base was stocked for long-term survival. 10,000 kilograms of preserved food, 30,000 liters of diesel fuel, medical supplies, ammunition, spare parts for the submarine, and extensive documentation Nordström had carried from Bergen, Kriegsmarine operational plans, intelligence files, and Norwegian coastal charts. By November 1945, the facility was self-sufficient. Nordström's log from this period shows meticulous planning, base operational, crew morale acceptable, outside context functioning. We can sustain this indefinitely. But sustain what, exactly? The war had ended. Germany had surrendered. What was Nordström's endgame? His personal log reveals the answer. We wait. The Reich has fallen, but the cause has not. If called upon, we will be ready. If not, we survive and rebuild. Nordström believed or convinced himself that his mission was preservation. He was maintaining a Kriegsmarine asset for potential future use. Whether he truly thought Germany would rise again or simply couldn't accept that his war was over remains unclear. What is clear, he and his crew lived in that cave, operating a hidden submarine base for years after the world thought they were dead. Life in hiding, 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock. The personal logs and diaries found in the base provide an extraordinary record of life in the hidden fjord facility. December 1945. Nordström's log, 6 months since disappearance. No pursuit detected. Norwegian locals believe cover stories. British occupation forces focused on disarmament, not searching fjords for submarines. We remain undetected. The base maintains strict operational security. No fires during the day, smoke would be visible. Radio transmissions only on specific frequencies at predetermined times, using codes only Nordström and his selected crew knew. Movement outside the cave occurred only at night or in bad weather when visibility was poor. January 1946. A concerning entry, British Navy conducting fjord sweeps. Minesweepers reported in Sognefjord. Ordered complete silence, no movement. 3 days submerged in the cave. Sweeps passed 2 kilometers from our position. Not detected. This was the closest they came to discovery. British forces were indeed clearing Norwegian waters of mines and searching for hidden Wehrmacht assets, but they had no reason to suspect a submarine might be hiding in an inland fjord. March 1946. The crew rotation system was working. Men on outside duty integrated into Norwegian society, found work, established legitimate cover identities. Several married Norwegian women. 2 obtained positions with local fishing companies which provided perfect cover for supply runs. Nordström's log mentions contact with other former Wehrmacht personnel. Meeting with K in Bergen. He confirms several officers successfully integrated. Network exists but remains dormant. No orders from above. We continue as planned. July 1947. A shift in tone. 2 years since Germany surrendered. Allied occupation of Norway winding down. Norwegian government regaining sovereignty. Our position becomes more secure as military presence decreases, but also more pointless. What are we preserving? For whom? The psychological strain was evident. Several crew members requested permission to leave permanently, abandon the mission, fully integrate into Norwegian life. Nordström allowed it. By 1948, the original crew of 48 had dwindled to 18 men who maintained the base part-time while living normal lives outside. December 1949. 4 years hidden. U-1172 has not moved from its mooring in 1,600 days. Fuel deteriorating despite preservation efforts. Supplies adequate but no longer necessary. Men live outside. Base is merely a symbol now. Still, I maintain it. Perhaps from habit. Perhaps from inability to accept that it's over. January 1951. The last regular log entry. The base remains. U-1172 remains. I remain. But the mission, whatever it was, is finished. Those who wanted to leave have left. The rest of us stay because we don't know how to stop being what we were. After 1951, the entries become sporadic. The base transitioned from active facility to occasional meeting point. Nordström and a handful of loyal crew members continued maintenance, but the submarine never moved again. The final entry, dated August 1958, 13 years since we disappeared. The base will remain sealed after my death. Let it be a tomb for a war that should have ended differently, or a monument to stubbornness. I no longer know which. What happened to Nordström after 1958? The answer would remain hidden for 66 years. The investigation, 11 o'clock to 13 o'clock. For decades, the Fjord base remained perfectly hidden. The submarine sat undisturbed 60 meters underwater. The cave opening, invisible from the surface, went unnoticed by countless fishing boats passing overhead. Norway's fjords held thousands of secrets. Wehrmacht equipment, abandoned supply dumps, crashed aircraft, all slowly deteriorating underwater or in remote locations. The government catalogued known sites, but had neither resources nor motivation to search every underwater cave. British naval intelligence had suspected missing U-boats might be hiding in Norwegian fjords. A 1946 report, declassified in 2019, specifically mentions several U-boats unaccounted for. Norwegian coastal waters ideal for concealment. Recommends sonar sweeps of major fjords. But the sweeps never happened comprehensively. The war was over. Resources went to reconstruction. not searching for submarines that might not exist. In 1967, a Norwegian diver exploring Sognefjord reported finding strange metal structures underwater, possibly a shipwreck. He filed a report with maritime authorities. An investigator checked naval records, found no registered wrecks at that location, and filed it as probable natural rock formation misidentified. The diver had been within 20 meters of the cave entrance. The 1990s saw increased interest in WWII wreck sites. Recreational diving technology improved, allowing exploration of deeper waters. Several German wrecks were located and documented. But the Sognefjord site remained undiscovered, protected by depth and the specific angle needed to spot the cave entrance. In 2010, a Norwegian maritime historian named Dr. Ingrid Larsen published research on missing U-boats. She identified 14 submarines declared sunk in Norwegian waters, whose wrecks had never been located. U-1172 was on her list. Larsen theorized some might have survived longer than official records indicated, but she focused on documented sinking locations, not on the possibility that boats might have intentionally hidden in fjords. July 2024. Everything changed when commercial fisherman Johan Andersen upgraded his trawler's sonar system to a modern 3D imaging unit capable of detailed bottom mapping. July 12, 0730 hours. Andersen was mapping fishing grounds in Sognefjord when his sonar detected an anomaly, a large metal object at 60 meters depth, showing clear manufactured geometry, too regular for natural rock or a typical shipwreck. Andersen contacted the Norwegian Maritime Museum. By July 14, marine archaeologist Dr. Henrik Johansson arrived with underwater ROV equipment. July 15, 1100 hours. The ROV descended to 60 meters and its cameras revealed the impossible: a cave entrance with artificial reinforcement, metal support beams, and what appeared to be a mooring bollard. Dr. Johansson immediately contacted the Norwegian Navy and the Directorate for Cultural Heritage. July 18. A specialized dive team entered the cave. What they found was unprecedented: a perfectly preserved Type Nike C-40 U-boat moored inside an artificial submarine pen, surrounded by intact structures, supplies, and documentation. The submarine's hull showed the identification U-1172. According to all records, this boat had been sunk in April 1945. July 20th. Investigators entered the command room structure built above the submarine. Inside, encrypted logs, personal diaries, Norwegian naval charts, and a leather-bound logbook with Kapitän See Erik Nordström embossed on the cover. The discovery made international news within 48 hours. The revelation 13 o'clock to 15 o'clock. Norwegian authorities assembled an international team: maritime archaeologists, naval historians, forensic specialists, and German military archivists. The logbook was translated by Dr. Wilhelm Fischer from the German Naval Archives. The 180 pages spanning April 1945 to August 1958 documented everything: the escape plan, cave conversion, crew operations, and Nordström's psychological deterioration. But the investigation revealed something unexpected. Cross-referencing Norwegian death records with crew names from the log, researchers found that 23 of the original 48 crew members had lived in Norway under their real names after 1950. They hadn't been hiding. They'd integrated openly. Several had served in the Norwegian merchant marine. 2 became successful businessmen in Bergen. 1 had been elected to a municipal council in 1962. When contacted, descendants of these men expressed shock. "My grandfather told us he survived the war, surrendered to British forces, and immigrated to Norway in 1946, one family member stated. He never mentioned hiding in a fjord with an entire submarine for 5 years. The crew members had simply walked away from the base, resumed normal lives, and never spoke of their time in the cave. Norwegian authorities, overwhelmed with displaced persons after the war, hadn't scrutinized German immigrants closely if they caused no trouble." But what happened to Nordström? August 2024. Researchers found a record in Sogndal Municipal Registry, a death certificate for Erik Nordström, note the slight name change, born 1903, died February 1982, buried in the local cemetery. The record listed him as a retired fisherman, Norwegian citizen, no military service mentioned. Exhumation order obtained. DNA analysis compared samples with Nordström's descendants in Germany, his sister's grandchildren. September 2024. Results 99.4% probability match. Erik Nordheim was Erik Nordström. He'd lived in Sognefjord, a small town on Sognefjord, for 37 years after sealing the base. He'd worked as a fisherman and sailing instructor. He'd married a Norwegian woman in 1964. He'd had 2 children, both of whom believed their father was Norwegian. He'd died age 79 peacefully, never exposed, never prosecuted. The Norwegian government designated the site a protected war memorial. The submarine, too fragile to raise, remains in the cave, now documented and monitored. The facility has been sealed to preserve it. Selected artifacts, the logbook, navigation charts, personal effects are displayed at the Norwegian Maritime Museum in Oslo. An exhibition titled The Hidden U-Boat: Secret Operations in Norwegian Fjords opened in December 2024. Nordström's children, now in their 60s, issued a statement. "We knew our father was German. He spoke Norwegian with a slight accent, but we believed he immigrated before the war. Learning he commanded a U-boat and lived hidden for years is devastating. He seemed like an ordinary man." The discovery forced historians to reconsider how many U-boats might have successfully hidden rather than been sunk. Norwegian waters contain hundreds of unexplored underwater caves. How many might conceal similar secrets? Estimates suggest 5-10 U-boats declared sunk in Norwegian waters might actually have survived longer than records indicate. Whether any others created facilities like Nordström's remains unknown. What's certain, Erik Nordström executed one of WWII's most successful disappearing acts. He faked his death, hid a submarine in a Norwegian fjord, operated a secret base for 13 years, then walked away and lived 24 more years as a Norwegian fisherman. He cheated death, evaded capture, and died free. His secret remained sealed in an underwater cave for 66 years after he abandoned it, only surfacing because a fisherman upgraded his sonar. Sometimes the guilty don't just escape punishment, they vanish so completely that history forgets to look for them.